So I guess I'm starting out with Emerson tonight, Ralph Waldo Emerson. I wonder if that's the Waldo they're talking about when they say, "Where's Waldo?" It just occurred to me. Never thought about it before. It's kind of nice to think about, where's Waldo, right? So, Ralph Waldo Emerson was, part of that group up in New England called American Transcendentalists. And there were several. And they came in the middle of the 1800s. And this was also when the Civil War was brewing. So there was great division building up at the same time, where there was this concentration of this transcendental perspective going on at the same time. So in some ways we're in a similar dynamic right now, where there's that the whatever dragons weren't tamed from that period are rising these days. At the same time, this focus on transcendent leadership. It's when there's that much division, it forces people to wake up to something inside that will unify. And whether they're outer-directed in the terms of making a compromise or peace in the culture, or whether inner-directed, where they reach deeper in themselves, so they become conscious of those frequencies that are above the duality, that unify it, or bring unity to it, or at least bring peace within themselves, which is, in itself a good contribution. So that's all up. It seems to me is a continuation of that. So, Quimby was one of the transcendentalists, and Thoreau, Louisa May Alcott. Louisa May Alcott had it easy. She just went out in her garden, and everything she saw was transcendent. So we could read her poetry and kind of get that connection to life, and in a simple way. One of the more precise statements by Emerson of transcendent leadership was in the address he gave called the American Scholar. He gave it to a group of students at Harvard. And so in addressing it that way, the American Scholar, he addressed it that way. Was an important part of the content of the meaning of what he was doing. So in a sense, he was addressing all of us, and so as the American Scholar. So by focusing on it that way, it's an approach that we take the approach of a scholar, one who studies, wants to find out, one who's awed by whatever you're studying, one who's curious, one who can look at something in terms of being present with it, what is that, rather than projecting onto it. No, I want to learn about what this really is. I want to know the nature of this. Just like when we look at the root word of education, it's to draw out. So That's the scholar. How do you draw out the meaning from within things? How do you draw out the deeper understanding from within yourself? So he's not only creating an invitation; it's an admonition that this is the approach. And throughout the talk, it's a long talk. I'm not going to read the thing or anything, but just pick some pieces out and then get to the heart of it. One of the things he challenged in the American Scholar, and I'll just take that as all of us, is it not to recognize that we're where we define ourselves, like he cautioned about being taken in the common thought, or the status consciousness of elite or Europe, or one who puts on airs or puts himself above. It's like, not that kind of thought. This is a deeper thought. This is something more inspirational, more essential to us. So I challenge us not to get caught in that kind of mental atmosphere. That we not just embrace the commonplace, not in a hierarchical sense, but no, we're not the personality shaped by common thoughts. We're this deeper possibility. So as the speech built up, it was really very much an admonition for the audience to rise to this. And so I'd like to look at that in terms of he's talking to all of us down through the ages. I edited his language slightly because they just talked to men back then instead of men and women. But this one sentence I want to read directly here, because part of the challenge was that being the American Scholar, we're also talking about building a nation. And so you could copy the nation after the European way or some other way. You could copy the nation. Actually, we copied the nation from the Iroquois Confederation, which was kind of cool. So this nation and that this was something new, a new way of looking at nation building. So there's a trajectory, a seed planted, and an actualization of that, a destiny. Something has to mature, which we're in the throes of, having to find our way through this. So there's Emerson. A nation of men and women will for the first time exist because each believes himself or herself inspired by the divine soul, which inspires all people, all men and women. So to me that's very clear what soul he's talking about. It's not the small notion of soul. Soul gets defined different ways depending on what perspective we look at it from. But the soul is connected transcendentally to everything. So it has that access and it has that presence, which seems to be the key. And that in our minds we're convinced that that's, we claim that, like this I am, I'm this. And then that conviction becomes a knowing presence, even beyond the belief. So we believe it because we know it, not try to know it because we believe it. See? So that's a pretty powerful statement, and so it's like a commission that this is a vision that we must rise to, was this challenge, and it invited us to be called to that, and my sense of these times we live in is that this is, this is it. This is the situation that calls us to remember that, to like recommit to that, commission, like take up that that perspective and let it shape our actions. Because he talked about. He talked about that this nation would exist, so there's a bringing into being. So there's the doing part, like what do you do? What actions do you take? Some of that's to get things done, like put procedures in place or laws in place, or to settle disputes, create relationships, create communities. There's that part of nation building. And then, but he also used the word exist. He didn't say build a nation, he said exist. So there's the sense that it has an existence, that by us folding ourselves into it, it becomes here too. So there's something in this nature of transcendental leadership that when we embody our soul, we also embody. It's like an internal nation. It's like we're building the nation inside, and it's being built in an existence, and that exists because we stand up in it, because we bring it present in our consciousness and our frequency. So it's like it's there in the frequency, and we bring it present by embodying the experience of it. So the first time, so he said for the first time, well, that's on the planet, but it's also a technique, a procedure. As you bring it, it's also bringing it present inside of ourselves for the first time. There's been many attempts throughout history to do this, but they're not here, and it didn't quite come about. There's been little pieces were brought in, and wisdoms and philosophies and archaeological evidence perhaps, but there's also much evidence of the struggle of humanity to even civilize itself, or to learn from nature, or to how to build a life here. And so that's all part of it too. So it exists it's new, so it exists for the first time within us. So there's a opening up inside in a way that this is something I haven't done before. So how am I going to do that? So the existence comes inside. So the nation is born here inside for the first time, and then at some point that begins to see it both seeps into the culture, like people in social groups just influence each other's frequency, and they get pulled in and get involved in that. but also then there's a resonance that inspires people to reach up within themselves and anchor that into the earth. There's a compatibility here, though, because we might be standing on Earth, but it requires a connection to Earth that is organic. It's the living Earth. It's regarding Earth as alive and us participating in the relationship or balance to that. So in a way, we have two kind of American transcendentalists. We have the people up in New England early on, but then we have the indigenous folks that were living here already, and there's a very much compatibility. And there's a great movement now within different Indian nations to reconnect with their heritage and lineage and those ways of living and those ways of connecting to the earth that are in balance, or in harmony. So it moves both ways, at least. And so that's going on right now too. I think one reason it's, people have a hard time, some folks are having a hard time learning from history, the cause and effect of things. And this complete domination and distortion and elevating oneself as superior or in arrogance has certain in sacrificing others so you can live well. The full consequence of that hasn't hit us. I think one of the reasons we don't have that example in history where is that there's been past epics of humanity that we can't find the evidence for very much, except by reading, going into Akasha or something. There's been extinction events. So we don't see the examples where they went too far and created an extinction or attracted one. I don't mean to create a scary image, but so it takes that for people to catch on. Well, so some of us are caught on that side because we were there. So we know where this is going. So we have that larger epical example, but also other times we've been involved with experiments of building a great civilization, and then it falls into that habit of haves and have-nots, and people lose touch with each other, but they also lose touch with the earth, and that's very subtly throws things out of balance, and then the enthusiasm, the vitality of life begins to diminish, and if we haven't secured our relationship to tapping the energy of the earth and the energy of the heavens and living off of that, we start to starve energetically. And so the other way to get energy is through destruction and domination. Like you pick a fight and then you take the energy, or you frighten people and then you take the energy. So as people drop from their internal connection and fortify, like build a wall in their aura, fortify, they disconnect from the environment, and they disconnect from the source, and they disconnect from the earth. And so all they have to live on is the energy that they were given through grace at conception and birth. See? And that goes into the organisms, and it's quite powerful. but it depletes. So but that can be replenished through divine techniques, divine relationships. Our soul will resupply. So part of the thing about violence going up and bullying going up is people are vampires. They're starving to death, so they have to live off of other people, or creating tax systems or monetary systems where the money flows up into the higher class. I think a few years ago, 70% of half the wealth of the world was owned by 70 people. Now it's like 25. So this is moving on here with this, and so that's attempting to use that energy. Well, the disadvantage of that is that the people they're taking the energy from start getting angry because somebody's taking their energy. So they start rising up and causing trouble and want to overthrow them. And then they take over and do the same thing, and then you have that same problem repeating itself. But the call now is to formulate, resolve that in a different way. So in our transcendent access, like resourcing from our soul, we can not only have the wisdom of the ages and the power of love, but we can also sort through the confusion and see which approaches bring balance and which are false gifts or false solutions. So you start to be able to recognize the fake news isn't just the lies. The fake news is also the narratives that cultures believe are true that are really not true because they don't have the frequency of the soul in them. They might have the frequency of somebody's evolution or karma, but it's a on the way to soul frequency rather than, it's not just from the soul. So you learn to recognize that. I mean, Lori had her tuning forks. It's like that. Our soul has a resonance to it, and it resonates with anything that's like it. Sometimes in the creating divisions with people, when the dog whistles, they're not like us. So it resonates to the not like us, to the difference, in that fear and ego safety. But the resonance of the soul, it resonates like they're like us. They've had, we live in a common human condition on this planet, and probably throughout the solar system, where we have to deal with the physical part of life and its practicality, and the evolution of that, and but being a soul in that, which we also feel our kinship with the very life we're moving into. Say we're traveling to meet ourselves. So in this awakening to soul, we first have to deal with it, and we deal with it physically and how to survive and how to work with the spirits of the earth. And so we look at things just on the grounded physical level. It's funny though, we'll make up superstitions about that, how that works, and some of those superstitions have a truth, but they're all related to that. animation within the physical existence. So there's then as we go up a little deeper within us, we hit, of course we always have our imagination, so we can make up anything and venture. It's like our starship, our imagination, where we can go anywhere or make up anything, and then how to apply that's another question. But so then there's emotional basis of soul, where we have feeling and passion, and so we have courage, and we react and respond, and just have a great time. And so there's this tendency to reference soul to that as an emotion, as a it does give a sense of self, though. You can get into attachment to that, attachment to others, and there's some good qualities of that, but still reflecting off of itself. And so then you get the folks that are mentalizing about soul, and they have these ideas about, they make up these ideals and master plans, and the superiority of their education or intellect, and so they get wrapped up in, that's the nature, that's the soulness of myself. And then of course we get up into the archetypal area. We have a great time because you get a real grand sense of yourself. You either it's like you identify with the gods on Mount Olympus, and imagine that we might be that. And the only reason I'm looking at those is to get to the one that Steiner called the spirits of Osiris. And the way Steiner looked at it in the evolution, in this duality, there were these two beings called Lucifer and Ahriman, and Ahriman was too much control, and Lucifer was too indulgent and too loose, and too much a party guy. So we were always working through that, so we have to learn how to not get too rigid or not get too indulgent. And so there was that balance. But then he talked about a third one called Osiris, and this way you're up against the cosmic mirror. And at that, if you reach that level consciously, you look out at that, and it reflects back your radiance and your glory, and you think you're God. You become a zealot. You become, I've got the word. I'm the one that's on top of the mountain. And so there's this arrogance of soul comes into it. And you can't get through the eye of the needle. You can't get through to meet yourself on the other side of the mirror. So there's a kind of arrogance can come into it, just like a lot of churches grew up from say Jesus' work or Buddha's work, and then they made up practices and rules, and then they become loyal to the rule instead of the inspiration or the living love that say Jesus brought forward. And so look from the behavior, and you can't always tell by the behavior where it's coming from. A dramatic act can be one thing coming from loving and another thing coming from fear or anger. It can look the same physically. So, but anyway, they make up rules and dogma, and so the attachment to those are like this identification or Asuric deception, where you cast yourself as in the right of the light, even if the source of that teaching that you did that with comes from beyond, from the living love, from the source, it starts lowering the frequency very subtly, and you can't tell because it's a light on light painting. It's all reflecting back to you, and so it does that, and then just when you might start noticing that it's a little dimmer here and brighter over here, you create a narrative, and then the narrative becomes your reality of the light. See, so narratives are great, like the Bible's great, and there's really some gems in there, but you have to keep in mind that it was a narrative created to give coherence or identity to a movement, but it isn't the source. It isn't the transcendent. Isn't that living love that is the consciousness that the soul brings? The soul is part of the divine frequency that it loves experience, and it it always moves towards finding ways to stay in resonance with itself, and sometimes that's a long path. But it treats good and bad the same. It's our response to it. So whether it's good or bad, it's resolved by bringing it into the loving. So people, there's this, they used to call dweller on the threshold, where your composite good and your composite evil confronted you. First, your composite evil scared you to death, because it looked so awful. And as soon as you could be present with that and loving, you just passed, because you resolved it. And then you get up to this higher realm, and you see your goodness, and you think, oh, I'm so good. And as soon as you do that, you fail the test. See, if you look at your good, say, that's nice, but I'm just loving. I'm not good because I did this good. And then you pass. See? And so that's a very subtle area that in building our internal nation that we have to refine. And that purification of that alchemical process. So you can tell, because someone who has the true frequency maybe has a lot of ability and a lot of intelligence and can do things. There's always a humility at the core of it. It's not better than. It's not based on office or class. There's a humility. They may even assert that, I'm the most, I think, might say, I'm the light of the world, but that's true. But to say it because it's true, not as an arrogance. So because when that my connection to spirit, my source is it. At some point that distorts a little bit, and then you have holy wars. And Christians start trying to kill Muslims, or conquer Jerusalem, or get even, have a jihad. See, it comes out of a little distortion. See, like Muhammad would say, we're all kinship, we're all one. And then, well, if that's true, why are we trying to kill each other? See, so this when we get into these subtleties, it's a challenge for us. If we can meet the challenge inside, though, and just maintain our life the best we can out here, because see, when you're involved with systems that are created out of every approach to everything, you're going to have some bumps and grinds. You're going to break things. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to not quite catch on. You're going to think something's a good idea, and it turns out to be not a good idea. and you have to realize that any action leads to loving. It just in a process. So like your own shadows, your own guilts, your own shames. It's like those are precious because each one has the potential of a virtue. It's like just a babe. It's new. It doesn't know the fullness of itself. So like shame hasn't become humility, humble. See, guilt hasn't yet become light. See, but it's on its way. See, because those are all feelings that we can wear and try out, so that we become strong in those areas and realize that, oh yeah, that's not us. That's not me. And so we use that discerning nature, that it's not like me, to sort. See, oh, I can do things that, so on the emotional level, I can do the shame. And that's the way I think the light works. And for a while, that's the best I have. But at some point when we can make that distinction, then the shame becomes valuable, because we realize, oh yes, the shame, I'm not shameful, and your nature comes from a place that doesn't shame others either. See, because you know that what they did is not about their character or their essence. It's about developing certain traits and behaviors, and that's what we're all here helping each other do. So so we may not have a perfect civilization in this nation for the first time, but it's that every response comes out of transforming it into loving. See? So that's what guides it. So whatever part of the feedback and correction of something is transforming it, whatever this was, into loving. Whether it's loving the earth, loving ourselves, it needs to be transformed, and that's the approach. So it's not an idealism that we project out in measure to, because that'll disappoint. If something disappoints, you know it wasn't a love action or a light action. It was an experience that can lead to that. However, see, disappointment comes from trying to control other people to make you happy. So when we get disappointed about where our nation is right now, like, be careful of that, because that's looking at the way you think it is or ought to be, some idealism, and it didn't do that. It didn't live up to that criteria. It didn't compensate for your judgments about yourself. It didn't do a lot of things, but it isn't quite on home base yet. See. So it's just that it's practical, and that didn't work. So the title of this tonight is cosmology. So what I've been exploring here is a certain cosmology. So we need to look at this relationship of everything and put together a cosmology for ourselves that includes these things, that helps us stay lined up inside with the transcendent love and grounded on earth and responding to life, so that we're in a position to discern and work and transform it, whatever we're doing, into loving. that's a cosmology. So I think, so what do we need to have well, we all have a cosmological view. So, but we need to embrace that so that we can sit back and kind of assess and have a perspective. It's a little bit like it gives us it makes us navigators. It gives us a spherical surround that we can use to. It's like a star map. We can use it to navigate. It informs us our position and what our relationship is and what's going on, and it gives a place for things. So that when the center of that cosmology is the soul, and then it reflects off the periphery of the of life, off the mirror, and comes back. It gives us a way to work with that, and so that our cosmology is our view of it. So it is internal. However, when it is consistent with the way creation is, there's a movement of grace to it. We do find our way around quite well, and things that we venture into really turn out to be that way. So one more thing to speak to here is the disappointment of expectation. But when you switch that up into the transcendent level, it becomes a vision. It becomes visionary. So like Emerson was a visionary, had a vision of a nation existing for the first time that was based on the wisdom of the soul. See? So that's a vision. It's not expectation. It's a vision. And so that vision is like, it becomes a kite that the winds of the transcendent wind blows on. And so all we have to do in our alignment is hold on to the string, and our visionary kite's going to just keep flying us along till we get where we're going. So I think I'll move into a meditation now. If that sounds like a good idea. We've spoken to a lot of things. So I think it's always easier to meditate if you close your eyes and just, when we say, well, take a deep breath, what that does is it shifts our attention to our breath. And that's a great cleanser, a great interchange. So when we breathe physically and breathe spiritually, it starts resolving, starts mediating the frequencies in our body and the frequencies in our psyche. The frequencies of heaven and earth become the mediator as we breathe. It's a natural process. Not to strain or force the breath, but the calming. So it should be quite easy at the moment just to touch into that loving place inside. As a real divine presence in the physical body. And sometimes we call this the inner teacher, the place of dialogue eternally that guides, and that we can reflect with, and that we can imagine with. we come with so many attributes that help us along the way. So as we light them up inside, we begin to incorporate the depth of our loving, and we, in our visionary consciousness, not to measure ourselves to the vision, but to be a way shower, to pull us along. So that in the knowing, in the presence, in the transcendence, we make our way on earth. So in this day of national consternation, just focus into the leadership inside, the transcendent leadership inside, and engage it in this great admonition that because of the place and time and situation we are, in small ways and large ways, we are part of creating a nation for the first time, based on the wisdom of the soul. So take your time, but whenever you're ready, just focus out and look at all those little boxes on your screen with all those divine lovers looking back at you, those patriots of the spirit. So I invite your participation, so whenever you feel moved to do so, just wave at me. And, okay, Judy, was that a stretch or a wave? Oh, this stretch. Okay, Wendy?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I was gone for a lot of that, but what really struck me was disappointment comes from trying to control others, and it didn't compensate for your judgments against yourself. And that really speaks to me where I am in my consciousness, and wondering if you can see anything to assist me, because I'm in a place where plans fell away, veils have been ripped off of me, of ways I've seen the world, and I'm just really struggling.
Yeah, you think after all that you'd have them all stripped off, but evidently there's still more.
Yeah. So,
and that's one of the approaches, it's to strip it off.
Yeah, so it's sort of whatever's holding me is holding me it's like symptoms of depression.
Yeah, see, that's another expectation, like coming into this deeper place looks a certain way. So if it looked the way I think it should look, I should be able to do a technique or have a big hand come in and take this out of me or off of me.
Yeah.
See, but sometimes that happens. So it's just enough just like when with our dogs, we give them a snack, and pretty soon just one snack lasts for months, because they're anticipating another one. So you see, one time it works in terms of the way you think it ought to, and the way you think it's right and just. So that's just enough of a snack to keep you plugged in. And that's depressing.
Yeah, like there's opportunity for a lot deeper surrender. I think for me, letting go more, but it just feels like I'll die.
Yeah, see, yeah,
I'll totally die.
Yeah, so if you can experience that, say, oh, I'm really getting close, because there's me, the basic self ego, that it has this wonderful design to thrive on the planet. See? So far so good, and then we mix all these other little ideas in there about who we are, and we take them into our identity. Well, when that starts to go, it feels like we're going to die. So you move into that feeling. See, you got to go into the feeling, I'm going to die, in order to see what you've done with it.
What's it?
The feeling you're going to die.
Go into the feeling I'm going to die to see what I've done with that feeling that I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So one thing you might discover is identified with it. I believe I can die. I believe if I lose this, this, and this, I will die. Well, that's a belief. Okay, that's one thing I did with it. That's pretty cool. And there's a place we get to where we can touch into our eternity. See, when they talk about being born again. Well, to be born again, you have to die again. So we forget that part. Oh, being born again feels like dying.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a birth process.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, what's dying that way? Well, I either tap into when I got kicked out of heaven and had to come here. That's dying. Or I'm going to lose this body that I become so accustomed to, and who will I be then? Okay, so see, we keep unpacking, like, what did I do with that frequency?
Yeah, what's coming up for me is I've had a lot of stuff happen in the last 2 months, but my youngest son's going to college for the first time. He's moving from California to Vermont. And I'm aware there's grief, but I'm also aware of when I was pregnant with him and the baby before him was stillborn. And I feel like I'm like reliving giving birth to him as I'm letting him go.
Yeah, so take advantage of it. Say, oh gosh, this is really cool. He's going out and it's pulling all this stuff up. It's like you didn't get all the afterbirth out. See? And all that stuff just comes out on a stream, and you're just taking inventory because, oh, there's this and there's this and there's a stillborn and there's how I felt then and what I decided and what I thought of myself. But, if I miss my son, I must be a really good mother. See? So just let it rip.
Yeah, it's really so unconscious what's working me. Like, I don't really...
Yeah, but then it comes conscious.
So,
so it's unconscious. Another way to look at that is, oh, it's taken care of. I just have to ride the sled.
Yeah.
See, like I was talking about being pulled by the transcendent vision of the kite. You just get pulled along. But see, we're down here skiing on Earth, and maybe we get pulled through the swamp or, bounced off a rock, or it's really hard to hang on to that string sometimes.
Yeah, I think the thing that's causing me the suffering is that I'm trying to figure out what it is.
You know what it is.
Going through just having the experience of whatever this is.
Yeah, you know what you know what it is. So then you got to look at what judgments or identity or whatever else you placed on it. Or, like this
I should know what it is.
Yes,
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, you had a stillbirth.
Oh, that is what it is. That just came just now.
Yeah, so praise the Lord.
Okay.
and say with that, there's all the judgments that were made at that time. Like being betrayed by God even. Or, what did I do wrong? Or who knows? But if you let them, it goes with the image. And sometimes you just feel really bad, and sometimes you throw up, and sometimes you break out in something, but let it go. Just drink some water and praise the Lord and let it have its way. God's will is love will have its way. Let it have its way with you. Even though you don't like to look at it, it feels really crappy.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. See, we all go through stuff like this. This is not uncommon to me either. I go through stuff like this sometimes. I do something, so I don't want anybody to know I did that. That's embarrassing. See, so there we go. Okay. Thanks. Praise the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. It is. It's uncomfortable. Like,
yeah.
I don't like people to see me this way, but here I am.
Well, then just dance in front of a mirror so you're the only one that sees.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Loosens something up there. Thank you.
Oh. And you really trust your process. It's right on. The mountain's just got a few more thousand feet on it. See, the thing about when Emerson was comparing Europe to here too is we have higher mountains, so that we have to climb higher. Okay, who's next? Yeah, John?
Well, I found it interesting you went to Emerson tonight because they didn't ask him back for 20 years after that speech.
I didn't know that. That's great.
I just happened to have reread it a couple of months ago. But the thing that's interesting, I thought, with Emerson went ahead and made that speech because he had an idea and he felt like he really needed to express this. People needed to change their thinking. And I get the feeling that's what you're saying with the transcendental leadership.
Yeah, he had a vision, he had to act on it. Yeah.
Yeah. That we really need to change our way of being. And the stakes are getting bigger and bigger.
Right.
For the planet.
Yeah.
So I got the question of, so why should we do it?
Well,
because
it's fun.
That's always a good reason.
Yeah. It's, I like it better than not doing it.
But I mean, in terms of, do we have an obligation to other humans to do it? Or are we just doing it for ourselves because that's what we do? Or we can do because that's the way cosmology is made?
Probably more the latter. So whatever level works for you. Some people are going to do it out of feeling responsible for, and then they can look at that and see whether it's out of a codependence or out of a genuine empathy or caring, because they'll have to refine that for it to really work well for them. Mm-hmm. See? So the deeper part is, though, we can't help ourselves. So
what do you mean by we can't help ourselves?
Because the essence of it is this loving consciousness, and it just does what loving does.
Okay.
In other words, it lives inside of us, and it will have its way with us.
Okay.
Now, see, sometimes in our kind of wanting to, I don't know, be safe or mediate or not buy into something crazy, we'll get a little cynical. And so we can check out, what was there, a little 1% cynicism icing on this cake? See, or I want to protect myself from disappointment.
I just do that to stroke my ego a little.
Yeah, the same thing. Yeah, so if you know you do that, then it becomes a dry humor. And that we can play with that, see? So you turn the cynicism into humor, and it's uplifting. And it also makes you really good at challenging the cynics that you meet in your life, because you know how they think. You know their particular brand of arrogance. See, use it to the advantage of your loving. You transform it into loving. See, so these things are all part of each of our gifts. These little quirky things we've been developing. So that's, we know ourselves. So we know we're the loving, and then we know what tools we have to use, because that's part of the character we built up over the millennia. And that also takes us into different areas to do things from each other that suit us, that suit our trajectory. Yeah. Somebody will work with the homeless, somebody else will go up to the Capitol and challenge people, and so forth.
Mm-hmm. But it sounds like for you, the reason, or not the reason, but you see the real importance of this is because, in a sense, humans are really on a precipice.
Yeah. Also, though, I have a funny reaction. It's like, oh, things are really screwed up. It must be time. See, it's time for maybe it's an opportunity, or things are really messed up. It's an opportunity, it's like really close at hand.
Things got to change. This is great. They're going to change.
Yeah, it's like a cosmic clock went off. Oh yeah, this is the way it looks. It's the dark before the light. It's like that sort of thing. And and for me, it's something that's always kind of motivated me, and so it's taken me different places, and this is where I am with it right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's all I got.
That's a lot. Anyone else? Anybody else? Okay, Luann.
Well, I'm having like a vision for the first time ever, I think.
Okay.
In terms of like having it be somewhat kind of conscious and kind of like a confluence of a whole bunch of things that have just been sort of coming about.
Uh-huh.
And the thing that's most that feels like it's fueling it the most is the curiosity of whether or not it will fail.
Well, this is great. Then, if it, when it's a success, you'll be disappointed.
Right. Yeah, that's possible. So it's actually being, but the freedom in it is that it actually might fail, but that I won't.
Okay.
So it has there's all these different like dimensions to it, but I don't know, that's just something I wanted to share. Just the curiosity itself is really fun. And it's just a new adventure that I've never done before. I mean, it's not huge. It's not like, disproportionate to how I can, manage my life and all the different moving parts in it, but it's sure fun. It's just fun.
Exactly.
And so the image that came up to me while holding the string for the kite was that I was also in a boat.
Oh, yeah, right. That's part of it, in a boat. First time I saw that image, I was on like skis on the ocean, with a kite skiing.
Yeah. I was just like kind of standing up in a boat, kind of trying to balance while holding the
Yeah, it's a great image.
Anyway, so thank you for that. And I spent a whole summer reading all different parts of Emerson.
Really?
Yeah, he has this whole other essay on spheres, circles, which is curious. Like I have the complete essays. They're so beautiful. But anyway, yeah, that was a big part of summer reading in the sun.
That's great.
By the pool.
He takes a different approach, but he's the same lineage as Rumi.
Yeah. Yeah, he has a kind of a fun approach.
Yeah.
And I was trying to link together him with Quimby and Emily Dickinson, a whole bunch of people in that 1800 something.
Yeah.
Era. But he has a whole bunch of things like about manners, and just some of it's really fun and some of it's very, deeper, more interesting.
Right.
In that frequency. But anyway, I'm enjoying my curiosity. That's all. Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
All right. Thank you, Luann. Okay, Win.
Well, I've been thinking about transcendent leadership a lot in my life lately. And today I was just thinking the qualities that a transcendent leader will have will be qualities that can be used at any time, in any circumstance. Today I was actually doing some of my maintenance things. I was scraping paint sills, scraping window sills to repaint and repair and repaint. And I was thinking, well, I know there's transcendent leadership. The qualities of a transcendent leader will be present even in something like that.
Sure.
So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you see those qualities of a transcendent leader that, you know, no matter what walk of life you're in, no matter what kind of work you do, what are those qualities that are available anytime, at any moment?
Well, of course, they all come together in the loving. You know, the not somebody has to do such and such for just the presence of loving. So what comes out of that is, kindness, respect, self-assuredness in the sense of, not in the arrogant sense, but in the sureness of self sense, the trust. The regard that's something, by regard and respect, it's like appreciating something for what it is. Like what the windowsill is and the window and what it does, and as you're there working on it, the service, the paint. You're scraping the paint. It served well, so you thank it, you appreciate it, I'm scraping you off because you served well and you're no longer holding well, so we're going to let you go on now, put new paint there. See, at the same time, I'm not just painting the wood in the technical sense, I'm putting love into the wood. So when I finish this windowsill, this window's going to be a window of light. See? Mm-hmm. See, it's that kind of attention to something. Which you've kind of honed, like in your cabinet making and stuff like that. You learned that about yourself. See, where you could, be sanding a piece of wood and be in the forest that produced the wood.
Right.
It's like, and then the grain comes out and you see the beauty of it. And there's that which turns you into the matrix of creation because it's all built on the same ratio. So, see, it's that kind of thing. So you get the wholeness of things.
Yeah, as you were just talking and you said the window of light, I really like that image. And then, of course, I thought about whatever it is that each one of us do, wherever we're putting our attention, whatever we're creating, that can be a window of light.
Yeah.
And then actually I find myself in a garden. I guess you could say the Garden of Eden, maybe, where our life here on the planet is, everything we do is in the window of light.
Yeah. Yeah, it comes to that, So, when you were talking, it reminded me of Emily Dixon, who in the smallest creature, in the smallest thing in her garden, she could see the universe.
Mm.
See? And it's so.
when I was kind of coming up with the definition for myself, this was a few months ago probably, for my definition for a leader, for a transcendent leader, one of the qualities that really came forward for me was willingness. And I was looking at myself that as a leader that I would be willing to respond to whatever situation was calling me at that moment, to respond to it and to the best of my ability, support it, assist it, help it along, So I guess there's willingness in that loving too.
Yeah, there's willingness, but in your willingness, you might also see that your place is to step back from it, to not interfere. So you can't have a preconception about that. See, if you're projecting onto it, willingness looks like this.
Right.
See, that might be true 9 times out of 10. The 10th time, your service to that is to step back and not disrupt it. So it's having so that requires a comfort with yourself. Not in your reflection, but in your being, in your heart, in your sense of being connected to the whole of things.
Right.
And in that choice to step back, you might even find in your empathy you go out and travel with that. So you realize that, the helping this one was to, in my spirit, step out of myself and travel with this situation or person as they go through their trials and tribulations, to hold the light. Not to identify with or take it on, but to be a light bearer. So it requires this fluidness, this flexibility, and the breaking down of our tendency to have rigid ideas about what's service, what isn't, what's willingness, what isn't. See, we're not making up a code. We're living.
Right.
We're learning to live a spirit.
Thank you. That was good.
Yeah. God bless. Okay, EdD.
Okay, thank you. So I'm really enjoying the last these classes. They are getting me, I'm really enjoying where my thoughts are going and cultivating and contemplating things. And so my question tonight is, I'm in a role that's responsible for certain decisions in my organization, and I'm the face for these decisions that are being made on an organizational perspective. And a lot of them, not all of them, but some of them, people don't like. And so...
What people don't like? What don't they like?
Well, we're making budget cuts to make decisions where no one's going to get a holiday turkey. I'm instilling a culture of respect. And so anyone who is being disrespectful, being a bully, harassing, they're getting written up, they're getting called out on it, they're getting managed out of the organization.
Yeah. Just tell them this is not the government. They should count their blessings.
Exactly, right? So my question tonight is, a transcendent leader. I mean, I just really have enjoyed this topic because it's, like I said, it's been very inspiring for me. And I'm curious, or I guess I'd love to hear some tools or keys of a transcendent leader when they make decisions that's good for the good for the organization, and it rubs up against people's individual agendas. And so, if there's, I guess I'm curious if there's any tools or keys or qualities of a transcendent leader that might assist me as we continue to move through these changes.
Yes, that you're able to do that, you probably already have what I'm going to talk about. But you know, a continuation of what I was saying to Win, there's a reality to it that is multidimensional. That's not just, you know, in the behavior like, well, I'm being mean to this person. So you might see, so we always check that. Oh, like, am I cutting this person, you know, because I really have this hidden thing about them, or is this just the best for supporting the most people? And then is it also, in what way is it serving this person? See, is it in how are they taking it? So what way is it serving them? You know, like if you're cutting the bully, you know you're assisting that person to work with that expression, because it's not like them to be that way. It's not like their soul. It's some misunderstanding or misidentification within themselves. See, so that's an example of like, does it support them in their greater good? See, so as you start unpacking this and distilling it down, it may look like a win-lose situation, but in the deeper reality, in the transcendent perspective, it's a win-win situation. You know, so it's in our nature to have to deal with our emotions about it, because it's hard. So then you have to take care of yourself and say, oh, this is tough, and I am going to have to be with myself and, you know, walk in the woods or meditate or something to really get a sense of my emotional reaction to it, and what's about that, and what do I need to touch inside of myself that's has a past experience where something unjust happened to me, or I thought I was unduly dismissed or not recognized or not given my due or not seen the way I wanted to be seen. See, and then that's becomes the gift to you. See, now it's possible just to be in your loving and say, you know, it's just come to this. It's we're going to have to let you go at this time, because of there's this job that needs doing, and your attitude is keeping you from doing it. See, so you explain to them what was expected and where they didn't measure up in terms of their behavior. It's not got nothing to do with the value of them as a human being, you know, because each soul is sacred and valuable. See, it's not. We have different experience levels, but it doesn't make. We don't have different, better than each other measures. In that sense, so you assist yourself to make it as practical as possible in service to the loving. There's a practical aspects, and by that means I mean that it may look, well, it's just practical, it's just business, but if you have some kind of attitude or wound or prejudice about it, then it's not a practical matter anymore. You've made it a vengeance instead of a practical matter. So you really have to look at how you're identifying with it. See? So you have to take care of all those elements in it, one way or another. And have some way to reflect, either inside or with someone, to make sure your perception's clear, and to make sure the reason for having to, say, cut back on personnel meets a real need that serves everyone. And then is it just serving the, you know, some companies, it's like maximizing profit for the shareholders, and so they cut people, sacrifice them for the shareholders. Well, that's not a practical action in the way I'm looking at it. See, that's a using, that's a vampire action. See, glossed over as just business, or it's for the health of the organization. See, is it really for the health of the organization? Well, and it may be, like I heard Elon Musk the other day say there was something about he had to cut back on people, on staff and jobs, so that he could get these cars out. Now, how much of his ego is tied up with that, I don't know, but there is a flavor in there, getting those cars out. He sees as a service to the planet. You see. So I don't know what all goes on inside of him. I don't know what goes on inside of him, but I'm just using that as my, that's how I could see it as an example. So it's and so then you can look at, am I doing this practical thing? Did I have to harden myself inside to do it? Or did I have to soften myself inside to do it? And so that's another measure. So you just find these ways to measure, where you are with it, so you can be as complete as possible. And just that you would ask the question tells me you're the American scholar. You're trying to learn this stuff, so that you can, base this action on what it's like, wisdom from the soul, but wisdom in terms of a soul being on this planet, and what it has to go through. So in compassion for each person's path in that expression. And so you do what you can. What? So you do what you can, even to, to cushion people, to help them on their way to, unless they're just, outright predatory, and they don't. Their reward is to get that they were predatory, instead of $1 million severance package. Anyway, what were you going to say?
Well, thank you for that, and I am aware that this is an awesome, amazing opportunity to sandpaper my diamond self and really clear out a lot of hurts and upsets. So I've been doing my due diligence as soon as I'm aware of it to do my clearing. And I guess you brought forward something else that I wrestle with, though, and that's the deeper reality is a win-win situation, and that's what I'm always going for. Actually, I'm always going for what's God's highest good, what's God's will. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'm just checking that the only way that I have that clarity is when I move my stuff out of the way. I clear my hurt or emotional triggers.
Yeah,
that's what I'm always looking at. Like, is this what's best? Is this God's will or is this not? And this is more of an agenda. And either way, it could be a God's will, but I want to be really clear as possible with that.
So the only will God has is loving's going to have its way. Now that's also a vision of that coming about, and everything that goes on is a process in getting in that setup. That's the value of cosmology. It helps you put those things in perspective. So rather than this God's will thing, trying to measure it to something, or to make a religion out of it, you say, how is loving working through this? How is this transforming into loving? How does loving work through this? The best awareness that I have. See, because God's will is going to work through everything. Just like unconditionally loving everything, so that the person that's doing evil gets the same support, but except that the reality they can grab hold of is limited, so they don't wreck things. So don't wreck the universe. So they're limited. Like you have in the Bible, the metaphor of the fall. All that means is these guys were playing bad, so they had to go into a smaller playground. They lost privileges. That's basically what that's saying. Just like you said, kids misbehaving on the playground. It's just time out. Okay. So kind of be vigilant of those ideals. Like, well, I want to do God's will. Why? Well, because it represents good and right and growth and that's good at some level. But someday you're gonna have to outgrow that. And just trust the loving and exercise that so that's so dominant inside of you that you get the relationship with everything you're doing. So it's not a trying, it's not a measure, it just is. So sometimes we might set something up and then just have to watch and see let me just watch this a bit and see which way that's going, see if it really is like I thought it was. See, because there's folks around slaughtering each other believing they're doing God's will. So you got to really check it out and see what is God's will. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so some people are kind of struggling to stay awake. So anyway, it's pretty much time. So let's wrap it up here, okay? So let me see if there's a way to take this inside and bless ourselves with it. In some ways, it's to really maybe let that vulnerability expand your sense of presence in your space, so it engages the fabric of the wholeness, and in whatever places of need or lack or incompletion inside, rather than judge those or fix them in this context, just make them a vessel. And that vulnerability, they can be filled with the loving. And then the loving will convert that lack into whatever is needed to fulfill the impulse that's sitting behind that. So the blessing then is the blessings already are, and just cooperate with them. God bless us.